I think what I'm doing out here is to continue to push the envelope and spread the message of what we're doing globally. And what we're trying to do here in Paris specifically is just try to take all the energy at its highest levels creatively, um, and bring all those things together to create really beautiful art and to create things that will, hopefully provoke or ignite the flame that will change the world.
Sweet, sweet. And so, Chris, a lot of people are familiar with some of the guys that you've worked with, but tell us for a brief story, or maybe how you even started in what you do. They know you as a style icon and a guy that's doing some great things in culture. Maybe you can talk to us a little bit about some of the brands that you're spearheading, and talk to us a little bit how that happened and how that started.
Wow. Like I said, I feel just super humbled to have any of those references framed around me. Again, I just want to give the glory back to God. Uh, I think it's just been an evolution for me. Everything that I've done, from selling knives to, going door to door, selling comic books, and, lining up, waiting for sneakers. All of these things are a part of who I am today, and all of the variables that have created our businesses. Um, we started out with a clothing line. It was called One Love. And One Love was just my efforts to try and sort of quantify or put form to an idea of what I had in my mind for clothing at the time. And I had learned very quickly through production and a lot of people that you have to encounter in order to put a line together, that it was a little difficult to put together a clothing line with the resources that I had. So I had to make an adjustment. And from there, I started to realize that I was the talent and that I was the product. And from there, me and my partner, Samantha, um, looked to open a door for our community, but also globally, that could tie in and imbue our talents, but also fill a very specific void, and that was called Fruition. And Fruition is, by definition, basically just seeing and living your dream, the realization of something desired. So what we wanted to do was just try and encapsulate that message cryptically into fashion. So very similarly to what we're doing now in infiltrating the church and the word into fashion and into music and into lifestyle, is what we tried to do with Fruition, from a philanthropic slash positive mind state sort of formula. And from there, that opened the door to working with Kanye. I was very fortunate and blessed to meet him 6 months after we opened. And we started to develop a line called Pastel. And Pastel stands for the past tells everything. From there, I was able to befriend at those meetings one of my good mentors. His name is Eddie Cruz, and he does Undefeated, which is out of Los Angeles. And from there, we were able to open Undefeated and Stussy in Las Vegas. And from those platforms, I was able to meet with John Unwin and a couple people over the Cosmopolitan Hotel, which is in Las Vegas, which is like a really cool premier destination for 20-somethings trying to get a new experience on Las Vegas. And I developed a store there. And within that time, I started to make trips out to Ohio. And there was this calling to try and do something in Ohio with LeBron, until he decided to take his talents down to South Beach.
Nice. And so,
Yeah.
so Chris, so some of the people that have never heard of the word fruition, maybe you can give some context to kind of what that is and what it looks like when you walk in there, when you step into the experience of that brand. What are some of the things that they can kind of expect? And maybe you can talk to us a little bit about the span of influence that's happened, maybe even recently over the past couple of weeks.
Well, I think in essence, Fruition is about knowing the rules, breaking the rules, and making them better. We've really tried to do all in our human kind of like physical, mental push to try and fill voids that we felt were missing. So when you go into Fruition, what we try to do is maximize our resources. And our resources weren't necessarily monetary. And that's kind of a part of what I want to focus on in speaking with you here. Obviously, I had visuals and things that I wanted to execute, but maybe for a future discussion. But the biggest thing is just understanding that resources are really people. And we were very fortunate to meet the right people and had the spirit of discernment on us to try and see the light in certain people that had very great relationships that ended up becoming the cornerstone of our business. So we maximized that resource to try and develop a place where designers could be inspired. So we didn't really think about Las Vegas being our sole income or our sole way of profitability. We thought global. I figured that I was in Paris or I was in Japan, even though I was in a small store in Las Vegas. I had visioned that, you know, a long way before that. So that's how we treated it. And so we really wanted to speak to the right people, not necessarily all the people. And so we focused on finding silhouettes and finding pieces that were really, really avant-garde and stimulated new ideas. And that's how Fruition became known from a textile standpoint.
Nice. One of the my first encounter with you guys is I think it was 2006, and Lupe's album had just came out, and I know the guy, Dr. Romanelli. Those of you guys that are into fashion, that name might resonate with some of you guys. But there was this book that was out at the pool show at the fashion show, basically out in Vegas. And when we were doing this, I looked at one of the magazines that was out there that it was, you know, for pool, and there was this guy in there that had like these Christian Dior track jackets, and it was funny because I was on eBay hunting for like these vintage Christian Dior track jackets, and then I seen this guy that had cut up all these vintage Christian Dior jackets, and then come to find out that was you, come to find out it was sold in Fruition, come to find out that Jeremy Scott and all these other guys were in your store, in your brand, exclusively at that time. And so that was just kind of my first interaction with the brand. Can you talk to us a little bit about how you were able to kind of leverage those caliber of designers and creatives at that base level? Like, what was the buy-in to get those type of guys involved in the Fruition brand that early?
Well, I think the one common thread between all those great visionaries and luminaries that you speak about, and of course yourself for even identifying some of those things, is authenticity. Authentic people. They live what they do, and that aroma, that scent, just permeates. And so I think that's what we've been able to attract. And that's what I feel like the word is, that's what I feel like what we're trying to do in pushing that is just being the best that we can be for God, and that he can do the rest, you know. So we've just been very fortunate to identify the light and see the light in people. I think we've done a lot on our part to try and strategize the right approach to new people and how we want to bring new people on and build our team and develop our companies and who we want to position ourselves next to. That all takes a lot of strategy. But for the most part, it's authenticity.
And my hope is that throughout this conversation, there's some people that are in our Redefine audience, and they have a dream for a line, or they're trying to start something, some sort of
I'm
adventure.
excited.
Yeah, some sort of adventure into some of these new ventures. And the challenge that we often find is that they have an idea or a concept, but it's never executed the way that they see it in their head, and they don't get the result that they want. For whatever reason, you guys have been able to do that and do it in such a way where I could name the list of the top 40 that you could think of on the charts, or some of the guys that are doing some things in music, and they all kind of recognize your concept, and it's kind of played through, and in fact is extended beyond that. So maybe you can talk to us a little bit about where there were some times where you had this idea and then the idea didn't go over as well as you thought. What were you able to do to kind of recourse and get back on track? Because that's important as we're trying to find that out for ourselves.
Absolutely. I think, like I had said previously, everything happens in layers. And I think the message and what resonates with me is that I was just being seasoned. And I still am. It's very much learning, you know. It's a lot of learning and being able to understand that certain doors aren't closed, but rather just being ripened and waiting for the right time. The concept for unknown came to me like in REM sleep 5.5 years ago.
Right.
So that was something in my heart for a long time. But I wasn't able to have the pullback on the slingshot until I met LeBron and until I met my partners there to really execute the idea. So that just shows that these ideas that are sitting in your heart, or these dreams that are sitting in your heart, are there for a reason. And you just have to continue to work towards that. And I'm here to just speak destiny over your lives, in our lives, and continue to encourage all of us to keep going, because these ideas and these dreams are very real. And Fruition is about speaking these things into existence. Everything that I lacked in monetary resources, I made up for in creativity. And I really embraced those constrictions to create beauty in the darkest places.
And so tell us, Chris, with kind of embracing some of those limitations and going forward, what's some of the things right now that Unknown is working on where you're seeing, okay, we want to take this further? Because in some of the conversations you and I have, we know it's bigger than a store. It's bigger than just the experience in these different forms of whether it's a mall or a shopping venue. What are some of the things that you're kind of looking forward to kind of embrace and expand the brand of Unknown, specifically given now that, you know, LeBron is they're saying now Heat Pete, right? It's Heat Pete. So he's on that now. What are some things that you're looking at and how to leverage that?
Again, I just feel so blessed that we could speak after a back-to-back championship. The hope is to modernize education. And I know that's an overarching sort of like large strokes answer to this, but right. Influence at the level that we're dealing with influence, distilled down, becomes education. And so what we're trying to do is to reimagine the mall landscape of America and potentially the world, God willing, in order to use the magnitude of that influence, that 5 to 10 minute window we have with the kids that are into sneakers and are into clothing, and infuse that with some really great words of wisdom or great insight on how to propel them further, faster, stronger. You know, I know a lot of these great conversations that I've had with these impresarios and these CEOs of these businesses, you know, 5 minutes, they sped me up 10, 15 years. Right. And those are the things that I'm wanting to privy to and give them visibility on, is that. And that's what I'm designing.
And tell me about this, Chris, because oftentimes, especially, you know, we got a ton of boutiques and these sort of things, especially if you're into street culture and street scene, and it's kind of blown now, so it's almost impossible to escape this part of the culture. Tell me, what is it that you guys did differently to make Unknown Fruition inclusive and not make it this kind of, you know, you got to have the gear, you got to have the cultural norms, but rather you can be invited and inclusive into the experience to kind of make it grow even beyond what it is. Tell me, what are some things that you guys did intentionally to make that happen?
It's a skill to say no.
Okay.
It's a skill, like I said, to discern. It's like planting your foundation in rock and not sand. We spend a lot of time praying, you know, speaking to really great like-minded individuals about certain decisions, and really try to do what's best for the church and for God and the community. And that was what, and still is, the guiding light for us.
And so when
and that's what I think, to your point, has helped us grow this into something else, is that it's very organic. And, you know, going back to the imagery for Jesus and all this not for sale stuff, we're not for sale.
Sweet. So kind of going back to some of the things that you just mentioned, what do you think is, I guess, would be a negative that you guys have tried to avoid in the scene that you're in? Because oftentimes, especially within the street culture, street scene, negative images are like times 10, whether it's drug culture, whether it's some of the explicit ways that women are treated, and you're right in the middle of all that with some of the influencers. What are some things that you've been able to do to exist there and then be able to be an influencer of some of these guys to put a different light on that scene?
Well, I keep speaking to the word cryptic. I've had to be able to assimilate and breathe that environment in order to translate and transcribe our vision in a modern way. And I think that's what my hope is for the church, and what my hope is for our community, is that we can learn how to understand all of that and identify those things, but juxtapose them at a high level. And so what it is for me, is talent is going to trump, and innovation is going to trump over everything. And that's what I've been focused on, is the mind state, the thought pattern, getting to the absolute core of what we're trying to say. Right. And I think from there, we're able to build in and infuse a lot of the things that are negative, or, you know, these perceived connotations to drug dealing and all of that stuff. But, you know, I grew up listening to Reasonable Doubt. Right. You know, the idea of street code, street ethic, being a G, all of that is all a part of business. And it's a part of something that I've been able to elevate in my mind that's helped me progress. So it's all about your perspective.
And so when you're considering your perspective and trying, especially considering the culture that you're a part of, it almost seems like if we are part native to, whether it's hip hop or whether it's skate or whether it's street or whether it's even education, whatever subculture that you're a part of, that there's some way that you're native to that and that ultimately you can try to impact that. What are some things for you that were kind of native to the culture when you were bringing up? Because that might make some sense for some of our audience, that it was just embedded where you were around, and then ultimately this kind of caused you to kind of create from that nativity. Can you talk to us a little bit about that?
So speaking to just my circumstances, is that what you mean?
Yeah, absolutely.
I came from a very poor family, and most of it was mentally poor, but I'm still very much inspired by that. So that was the part of it that flipped the switch for me, was turning it, the adversity, into fuel, and working on that to try and challenge my family's decisions on who they were and our ability to change our generation. And I mean just like our own family tree, and sort of the idea of Asian family, first generation American, coming up. So when you look at Fruition, a lot of the things could easily be looked at as just old garments, you know, just like a bunch of old books that are meaningless. But I was able to maximize that by reframing and embracing that constriction again to try and create something new and beautiful. So what I did was, like I said, saw the opportunity in what was next to me. Very similar to how I feel like the core of a creative inside of a church could use that clergy and that family member and those friends in the church to create a new business. I feel like the church within itself has a network of people and creatives that could build its own business. So the commodities are right in front of you. And I just prayed and prayed for that door to open and for me to see that. And I was very fortunate to be privy to a place where I could get access to certain clothes. And from there, it was up to me on how I would reframe it, because none of us are, even Steve Jobs isn't reinventing the wheel.
Right.
He was able to understand it and modify it. And that's all we're trying to do now, you know, is understand what's around you and modify it.
And I think it's interesting to say, because oftentimes we look at our limitations and some of the constraints around us as just that, as constraints. And what it sounds like, even whether it's the culture, the family that you come from, there's ultimately beauty in that place of nativity. And I think that it's important that if we can try to leverage that and kind of maximize those things, then there's a whole nother world that can kind of open up to that. And to be even more frank, is that culturally, ethnically rather, is that it almost seems like you were almost an outcast, but in some reason you were able to flip that and make this domain to your culture, and now it's influencing everybody, regardless of race, ethnicity, family. Everybody is in there because you embrace some of those constraints and then made moves. So we applaud you for that, man. Let's talk a little bit for just a couple more moments about this idea of subculture. We had this conversation, Redefine audience, a couple days ago, where we were talking like, you know, it's not so much about race and culture as much today amongst our generation. It almost seems like the separation and kind of the prejudice leans towards these different subcultures. And if you're part of the skate crew, if you're part of the intellectuals, you're the academics, you're the street scene, we kind of prejudice against that world. Now let's look at it from like a biblical standpoint, and where we want to ultimately try to be inclusive and try to make sure that we're impacting on all levels. Chris, what can you speak to just in your own frame of reference that you've been able to kind of put down some of those prejudices within subcultures and then really try to move forward and embrace almost everybody that's giving you a larger reach? Can you talk to us for that, just a little bit about that?
Well, a lot of what I've done, and this is very much a dynamic moment for me, because I've sort of never broken the code of silence. Everything that I've done, from a interview or sort of like elaborating on my story, has been very, very strategic. So I kind of want to just preface by saying I've been doing a lot of learning, and I've been leveraging a lot of the umbrella of other personas in order to have it resonate further, but also for me to keep learning at my own pace. And I think if we're talking about indigenous cultures and the things that we're into, unknown was all the learnings applied from Fruition. So if you can imagine, Fruition is 900 square feet, and every inch we tried to design, and every word, every person was so thought out and overly thought out to the nth degree, to the point where I was able to take those learnings and understand how to try and bring that level of service to a wider audience. And that wider audience is exactly what you're speaking to, where there's no lines, there's no barriers. But it was a matter of me learning and not being ignorant to that and starting to see the world differently. I know that I had to, sell myself on the concept of doing them all. And the way that I did that was started to think about the internet. And I just started to look at our store like 15 gigabytes. And Nordstrom is 35 gigabytes. And, it's just a physical internet. And once I started to realize that the transparency of the internet was taking over retail and the kids were just buying things online, it really gave me motivation to try and redefine, pun intended, what that retail experience needed to be. But we were just, again, very fortunate and blessed to have a couple of stars line up in order to do this at a high level.
Now, Chris, you said something that I think was really important to kind of reiterate, is that you had to let those lines drop after the learning came. What are the things that you've tried to do now, as I could list on from even this incredible drop that just happened with Kanye's album and your kind of influence in that project. And then, of course, we all know about Jay's project that's going to be coming out, and Jay and B, they frequent your spot down there. What are some things that you're learning to how to take it to the next level and keep it moving forward so that you don't stay stagnant in a 2010 model or even a 2013 model? What are some of the things that you're doing to stay moving forward so that those type of influencers are still looking to you for direction, ideas, input? What are some of the things that you're doing that maybe our audience can kind of learn and glean from?
I'm just starting to get into lanes that no one else is feeling, and a lot of it is the church. And that's why I'm speaking here. I want to start planting seed in a lot of the creatives and the visionaries within the church to see that germinate. And I think it's a very big void and a big area, very similar to maybe the Wright brothers building a plane, and no one did planes before them. It's like everyone's looking for a zone and a lane to fill, and I see a very big one in the church, and trying to manifest that accordingly and seeing the modernity of that help society, popular culture, and building strong leaders to get them there.
And one of the things that you're trying to, it seems like this is a first for you in some stances, but we appreciate you guys being here and trying to be a part of Redefine. Maybe you could tell us just for a minute, because we're going to wrap up shortly, but maybe you could talk to us a little bit about if we were going to try to do an unknown, or if we were going to try to do a Fruition or an Undefeated or anything along those lines, what's the first thing? Because there's a lot of dreamers in here. There's a lot of guys that have clothing lines. They have brands that they want to try to start, and they don't seem to be working and getting any traction. What are some maybe 2 or 3 things that you can try to tell us that we could focus on and it would be helpful kind of get some traction, in your opinion?
Well, prayer helps and it works, but learning how to communicate, and that's the biggest part, is being able to take the communication skills from your friends and your parents to the boardroom, to the street, transcribing it onto clothing or your products. Communication is what all of that boils down to. So learning that at a high level is just being able to put yourself around great people. I'm always constantly on YouTube, watching interviews and using the internet as a passport to information that is readily available that wasn't available 10 years ago. So communication and being able to really articulate yourself, I think, is a very big part of the process. I can't stress enough just the beauty of hard work and being able to do something you would do for free, and having that drive you. Because, once you do things that people don't do, you start to accomplish things that people don't accomplish. And I think that's a big part of our testimony, is just repetition is reputation. keeping it going. You know, after a loss, we're still shooting in the gym. You know, and I'm there. You know, I'm on it, and it doesn't stop for me. Sometimes to a fault, and I'm working on that. But a lot of it is really solely based on listening to the Spirit and listening to where God is placing you, and trying to maximize on that with all the resources possible. Well, and again, I would love to hear more of the questions from the church and the community there, and be in any way a gateway to their dreams. And I think that's what Fruition's about.
Absolutely. Well, we're going to roll into this next segment. We're actually going to turn it to the audience, and I know a lot of people are in here have some questions. Some of them might be good, and some of them just might be just interesting given the circles that you run in. Right now, we're going to open it up to our audience because Chris he's actually has a couple other shows that he has to go to right there in Paris, so he's going to be with us for a few more minutes. So I want to open
Rick Owens was amazing.
Oh yeah, Rick Owens, the designer, leather, all leather, everything. That's him. You guys see all the different dudes that are doing it. That's him. He's at his show right now. He just left the Rick Owens show. But those of you guys that have questions, if you can raise your hand, and we're going to give you an opportunity to ask Chris anything that you would like right now. And so what you can do is if you can go to the front, right over here in front where these cameras are at, and we'll be able to open it up to you guys, because this is one of the things that has kind of been interesting, to make sure that we can give a guy like this some influence into input into what it is that you're doing. And we would love to be able to give you guys an opportunity, if there are so, to kind of ask Chris whatever it is that you would like. And it's kind of the two-step, because he was going to be doing a collaborative tomorrow where it'd be a smaller community of just you guys and him. He's not going to be able to do that. So we wanted to give you an opportunity to do that right now. Do we have that mic set up?
Have you ever sponsored any books or publishes?
Chris, I was saying, have you ever sponsored any books? You've had anybody that's kind of approached you with a book deal, or maybe you've been involved in any projects with literature at all?
No, sir. Not yet. Hopefully at some point, still aggregating experiences and hopefully ideas to share with you guys.
Sweet, sweet, sweet. Appreciate the question, man. And I guess when we're trying to figure this thing out and we're trying to come up, it seems like there's people that have all different types of mediums, whether it's book, music, fashion. It seems like it's wide open. So we're going to turn it to one of our other questions here in the audience for just a quick second.
How has school helped you reach?
She asked a good question. How does school and education, how has that kind of helped in your process of fulfilling kind of the brand of Fruition Unknown and some other things you've worked a part of?
Well, at a certain point, it taught me discipline, and it taught me how to communicate to the people around me, and communicate in a way where it's not just talking. It's how you dress. That's communication. You know, the way that you stand, your posture, all those things were part of school. But I think at a certain point, you got to make sure that you're using school and school isn't using you. And at a certain point, I was able to identify that I was ready to move to the next step and apply the learnings that I took from school and sort of create our own version of that.
Sweet, sweet. Who we have next? Next question.
Hi, Chris. My name is Lovely Edwards. I do a lot of writing within the hip-hop culture for different magazines. And
That's awesome.
Thank you. When you and David were talking about transcribing, it kind of piqued my interest. When I'm in different environments and different surroundings and asked about my beliefs and my spirituality, I find it hard to, well, not hard, it's sometimes difficult to get others to understand that, yeah, I have tattoos, yeah, I love the sneaker culture, yeah, you can catch me outside waiting for Jordans, but at the same time, I have a love for Christ. So how do you, through Fruition and other ventures that you have, speak about your spirituality and your relationship with Christ and still be able to kind of be in the midst of what's happening?
Chris, did you hear that? How, given where she's at, how does she do that, given what she believes?
Yeah, it's an awesome question. I think what we try to do, even in our business philosophy, is equip ourselves with ammunition. So I have extensive options and a array of ways to imbue a Christian message that isn't so literal. So I can say something or respond to something contingent on the person I'm talking to, identify what he's into, his sensibility, and in that way answer accordingly, but it might not just be literal, and it might be metaphorical. And the more like abstract it is, or however it is that you decide to answer, it just ignites something. And I think that interpolated with leading by example becomes something bigger than just words.
Sounds like lifestyle ultimately is something that's major in trying to do that.
I hope that answered your question.
Okay, we got 2 more questions, and we'll go ahead and wrap this session up. Yep, you're on the mic. You can go ahead and talk.
Okay. Hi. A lot of times we quit, we give up, things are too hard. How do you deal with that adversity of just not quitting, not completely giving up when you were building Fruition?
Wow. People are hungry out there. Reality check. There's a lot of hungry kids out there. There's a lot of passionate people out there. There's a lot of kids that want that spot. There's a lot of people that are out in Asia in some remote country that have access to nothing. It's just a realization that we're equipped to do so much, and there's so many people that are just wanting to be in the comfortable, relaxed environments that we're in that drives me. And I'm very passionate about that. I'm very passionate, hyper-driven about not taking for granted what we all have in front of us. And I think I've just been able to magnify that in my life, and listening to College Dropout and all these different, these things minister to me. I'll watch a really great interview that Lauren does. I heard you playing Lauren. And when I get down on inspiration, I'm listening to that music. I'm listening to Miseducation. I'm watching these great interviews, and I'm learning. And I use that to try and ignite something back in me if I feel down, or if I feel like I'm at a roadblock with a creative idea. I'm just trying to stay constantly sharper.
Nice, nice. And we're going to take one more question, and then we're going to wrap this session up.
Okay, I have 2 questions. One,
it's always that last one that does it every time.
How much money did it take to start off your business? And 2, where do you find all your vintage clothing?
He just
wow,
asked,
that's awesome.
He asked you the 2 questions you probably wouldn't want to answer, but that's what happens.
No, I think that's great that you're kidding. Well, I started with nothing, kind of. I started with a few $1,000s that I made from selling some T-shirts from the One Love line. And the rest, I didn't even have enough money to pay my first month's rent. It was just hard work and, just trusting in God, trusting in Jesus that, we're gonna work very hard, from August 1st to August 30th to get that second month's worth of rent. And I, again, relied on the things that I didn't have as my resources. So I had some really great friends. I had accrued some really great contacts at some cool magazines locally that helped me market myself for free. And I just really tried to push as hard as I could on my own and let grace and let God do the rest. And I'm a testament to that. I'm a testament to just going on the calling and not overthinking it. We had to open that store. It was a timing thing. I couldn't wait because someone in New York or Los Angeles was going to do a similar concept, and it would have bastardized and made our concept look like a rerun or a copy. So it had to be open. And there was no plan B, nothing. So I had to just get it open. And, there's just many instances where, my landlord ended up being a father of someone I went to school with. And
Wow.
God just aligned things in a certain way that I couldn't explain. And these are the things that I just encountered and can kind of be a testament to. And secondly, with regards to vintage clothing, we work with a lot of great collectors. As you develop the business and you start to really zone in on what you do, it attracts a lot of similar minds, and it attracts a lot of great things. It's the light. So we started to befriend a lot of customers and great people that were trying to share their talents and their gifts, and that's how we aggregate a lot of the clothing. But a lot of it is sort of based on our taste and being able to identify what's good and what's not, and that's the real skill. That's the real talent.
Well, Chris, we appreciate this time, man. We know you got some things handled over there in Europe, and so we appreciate you dropping in and Redefine, man. Maybe you could give some parting thoughts to our audience that are here today, and then we'll close this session.
Just, I wish I could be there with you guys personally. Thank you so much again for the opportunity. We're all working very hard to try and push what you guys are doing in our own way. And I foresee myself hopefully meeting all of you at some point in Virginia with a more undeniable set of visuals and things that can articulate what I'm saying at a higher level and hopefully evoke emotion. I just want to continue, like I said, to speak destiny over all of your lives. You all have a vision. There's a path for you guys. That's why you guys are there and working with David. And I just thank God for you guys. And I praise God that I'm here to try and help you get to where you guys are headed to already. And I just think we have to be very strong in this time. We're in a generation and an era now where more than ever, evil and negative thoughts are very, very real, and it's all surrounding you. So it's just important that you stay sharp and that you be around strong-minded people and stay in the Word and stay focused on the bigger picture and not fight the small battles. And that's what I really, let God fight your battles, but even in your day-to-day lives, stay focused on the bigger picture. And I hope that I can, like I said, help you all get there. And if you guys can submit some cool ideas, I would love that. My email is Chris, CHRIS, @fruitionlv.com. And if you guys have ideas on modernizing fashion, business, infusing it with the message and the church, I'm definitely open to your ideas.
Nice. Well, Chris, we appreciate you so much for hanging out with us. Redefine, could we make some noise for Chris Julian?